I'd like to call a meeting to order. This is the Wednesday, June 27, 2012, meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission. First order of business is a continuation of a notice of intent filed by Paul Mercier for a project location at 51 and 57 Shirley Avenue, construction of a single-family home in bordering lands subject to flooding, otherwise known as the floodplain.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Erickson from North.
Can you wait until you get to your microphone, please?
I am Stephen Erickson from North Environmental Services. At the previous hearing, the chairman had asked for some information, a narrative description of the floodplain, and that's part of what I've just handed to you. We sent that in on June 19th, shortly after the last meeting. So it turns out the volume of the 12 columns that will be holding this up is 1.22 cubic feet per linear foot. So for the area from elevation 94 to 95, the bottom part of it, we're providing we need 2.44 cubic feet of storage. We're excavating that area, so we'll be providing a total of 369 cubic feet of flood storage, or 367 cubic feet more than the lost storage at that elevation. The remainder of the flood storage we have to provide at a similar elevation. So from the elevation 95 to 100, we lose another total of 6.1 cubic feet of flood storage. There are about 7.48 gallons per cubic foot. So we must compensate for 45.6 gallons of flood storage lost. To propose this, we provide a subsurface tank capable of holding 100 gallons, or over twice that capacity. So the tank would have an inlet to it, the water would fill up during a flood stage event, that 100 gallons will be held, and there'd be a requirement that would be pumped out after the flood event. Chris had also asked what the lifespan of the steel beam is. Doing a little research on the internet, they tell me that the lifespan of a steel beam is at least 100 years. There is nothing specific on that. I'm sure that it's basically part of the environment, but I think we've all seen bridges like the Tingsboro Bridge with girders on them that are well over 100 years old. Of course, that may be why they're replacing them, too. We've also given you a copy of the floodplain so you can see where the site is. The bottom line is that we are compensating for more storage of the flood volume than we're actually using on the property, and I don't think that this will have any impact whatsoever on flooding on other pieces of property.
Excuse me. I have several questions here. I put marks on my plan of fill in the floodplain that you haven't addressed in your calculations. The 12-inch concrete footing has not been addressed.
The concrete footing is below ground. You don't compensate for stuff below grade.
The concrete is impervious. Therefore, it's taking up space. Should that ground at that point be something that is pervious and holding water? The same would apply to the concrete footings on the deck and the concrete footing that appears to be holding up the front stairs. None of those have been compensated for. We also have a crushed stone driveway that we have no explanation about where the compensation is for that crushed stone. And we have stone surrounding the Cultec roof drain that and we don't have any explanation of what's going to compensate for that structure. So why don't I go through my list here. We had the I-beam lifespan was a question we had. And I believe your memo says you did a quick internet search and came up with the 100-year lifespan. We were hoping for something that would have been written by an engineer and would have actually been based on the situation at hand. I believe the city engineer refers to no, I don't see it in that. I had a paper somewhere that referred to lifespan. It's very variable, and I guess it depends on what it's made out of, what it's coated with, what it's going to be sitting in. Is it going to be sitting in water, or is it going to be sitting in something else? So I think that's a question that has not been answered. And just looking at the neighborhood, I took a look at the Lowell GIS and looked at the elevations in the neighborhood, and this appears to be the lowest lot. And I would think that this lot is probably going to be flooded in practically every rainstorm because the street is higher, and it appears to be a very wet type of lot. Now, I don't know if you've done soil testing out there, but I think what the soils consist of is relevant to a lot of these questions about compensation. If the soils are sandy, for instance, they're already holding water, and perhaps your compensation of lowering the elevations isn't going to yield as much new compensation of water as you think. On the other hand, if it's ledge under there, it could be an entirely different answer to what is actually going to be affected there. So I just think the plan has not been corrected. You know, there's a lot of misinformation still on the plan that certainly can't be used as something for our file without corrections. Why don't I just see if anybody on the, do you have anything you'd like to say before I ask the commission if they?
Absolutely. I don't know what you're talking about, misinformation on the plan. I think the plan is pretty clear. The regulations, the state regulations and local regulations, never require compensation for concrete underground. It's just, you don't do that. That's not the way the calculations are performed. That's an area that's already underground. In the springtime, that soil could be saturated, it could be underwater. It doesn't take away from the flood storage capacity when it's underground. There's virtually no flood storage capacity there to begin with. Calculations never account for a footing or a below-ground system. Flooding during smaller events, well, we've got the 100-year event. That's what we calculate for, the worst possible case. We're covering for the smaller events already because we're taking the compensatory storage out of the area that we're grading. The soils on the site are a loamy sand. It's a very permeable, nice soil. It's typical of that area. We know what it is. The driveway, we're going to be excavating out some material and putting the stone back in. As we've discussed before, when we're putting crushed stone in there for a gravel driveway, we're actually increasing the storage space by 50%. So we're gaining storage space. The roof runoff, once again, we're providing the infiltration for it as we're required to by the regulations. Actually, the regulations don't require it for a single-family home. But you're right, the ground is going to be saturated during the springtime. and you don't get any infiltration. But we don't need infiltration during the springtime because the ground is saturated. The objective of infiltration is to provide for recharge of the groundwater during the drier events of the summer and the late fall when we have less water. And the objective of that is to recharge the groundwater so that it can feed the streams. The groundwater is being fed by the streams during the high spring water. It's going into the ground. During the summer months, the groundwater draws down and goes into the streams. The objective is, because we've paved so much area with parking lots, highways, houses, and whatever, we don't get as much recharge during the drier months when we need it. The intent is not to provide recharge during the springtime. It doesn't even matter. There's no need for it. We've got plenty of water in the springtime. It complies with the regulations in every respect.
I would agree that there's plenty of water in that neighborhood in the springtime and probably many other times. We haven't mentioned the tank, the holding tank, which is a major part of your excess compensation that's required, and that is absolutely not allowed in the present day by the DEP. So,
Well, we haven't gotten the comment back from DEP, but I think DEP will allow it. It's only 100 gallons. Remember, we've got a watershed here that's 350 miles long. 100 gallons of water in that area is a drop of water in the ocean.
I still think your plan lacks a lot of information that,
I'm still not sure what else you think we're lacking.
well, I've listed it, and it's not on the plan. Your plan is full of errors.
I respectfully disagree.
You haven't updated it with the information that you have put on your memo, for one thing.
I didn't update anything on the memo. I clarified the numbers that are on the plan. They're the same numbers, they're
Well,
the same
let
calculations.
me open it up to the other commissioners.
Can you just describe the subsurface tank for the overflow, like where it would be located, and a little more about how it would work?
Sure. There are two kinds of subsurface tanks being used. There's an infiltration tank, which is right in here. The stormwater regulations on a larger subdivision with 4 lots or more would require us to infiltrate a ½ inch of rainfall from the rooftop. It only requires a ½ an inch of rainfall to be infiltrated. We're infiltrating approximately 1 inch or more, so we're way above the standard. During the low flow events, this area collects the water, it's got stone around it, it sinks in, and it recharges the groundwater. That's the objective. The remaining tank for the compensatory storage area is simply a 100-gallon tank. It's just not a big tank. This is the equivalent of 2 55-gallon drums with an inlet on it that would fill up in seconds during a flood event. That tank is impervious. No water gets into that except through the inlets of the tanks. No, it's just a 100-gallon tank out in the back.
Ms. Lynch?
I guess just to follow up on the tank, you had mentioned that if it fills up past the 100 gallons, that it would have to be pumped out after an event.
Yes.
How would you know? Is it visual that you could see the water at the top of the tank? Like, how would you know it would need to be pumped out?
If water goes into the inlet, they would have to pump it out.
Okay, so
I
there's
mean, it's not a lot of water to pump
Right,
out.
right.
But we would expect the order of conditions to require that, and
Okay.
engineering wants a stormwater operation and maintenance plan. We would include that in the operation and maintenance plan, and it was included in the notice of intent.
Okay.
Anytime there's a storm event that would reach those inlets, they will be required to pump it up.
Okay.
The order of conditions will be recorded, and I would expect that to be a continuing condition. It would be on the deed forever.
Okay, so anytime there's a rain event that you would potentially come to the 100-gallon capacity, they would be required to go
Anytime
out
it
and-
reaches that inlet elevation, and that would be obvious.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Biedron?
Absolutely. The order of conditions will be recorded, and the stormwater maintenance plan will be recorded. They will be on the deed. Any attorney, before you buy a home, would make you aware of all of that material. Not to mention, my client is the builder of the property. He would have to make the buyer aware of all of that. There are obligations to owning a home.
Not aware of obligations to owning a home, I just want to know that they know that they have to pump that up. Usually we buy a home, it's like, ooh, I have sewer and all this stuff, that's something extra expense that I'm a homeowner to know.
Yeah, it's not a big cost, so we don't see a problem with it. I'm sorry? Oh, it would be their cost, yeah.
Mr. Erickson, have you received the comments from the city engineer?
Yes.
Would you like to address, I'm on page 2 of these comments under stormwater.
Sure, hang on one moment. He notes the project is within the floodplain.
Yeah,
We
know-
agree.
We know that.
Yeah, the applicants claim that they can provide compensatory flood storage simply by excavating existing soil within the floodplain is flawed. I don't know what that means. There's nothing specific telling me that's flawed, but obviously if we're taking soil off the property, we're increasing the compensatory flood storage. That's the standard way to provide compensatory flood storage. During flooding conditions, the underground chambers will already be full with groundwater, therefore they do not have the ability to provide any compensatory storage. I suspect that he's talking about the infiltration chambers that have an open bottom, and yes, they will be full, but they're not for compensatory storage. The only tank for compensatory storage is the 100-gallon tank. And again, that's simply 100 gallons of water.
I'm not sure why you are saying that you don't think it's the other tank.
Because I don't think anybody would, that's not what the intent of those. You know, they weren't intended to provide compensatory storage. They weren't in the calculations to provide compensatory storage.
Which tank are you referring to?
The infiltration chambers, they're clearly labeled as infiltration chambers.
That's not the, they're talking about the compensatory storage tank.
That's the 100-gallon tank.
Exactly.
That's going to be a sealed tank. Nothing's going to go in that. Doesn't matter how much the groundwater is there. The holding tank will float when they're submerged. No buoyancy calcs were presented. That's easy enough. We can present those calculations. Again, the buoyancy of a 100-gallon tank is not significant. Annual stormwater operation and maintenance report must be filed with engineering. That's quite all right. Contact name must be submitted. Not a problem.
The rest of it, I don't think is relevant to our needs, but what about the volume of the stairs?
I don't know if those were taken into consideration. I don't think they were, so we may have to add a couple of gallons more, but it's not much. You know, we're not going to use a wooden stair. We're going to use an aluminum or wrought iron kind of a stair. So the actual volume of that is minuscule. We've already got more compensation than is needed on the site, so.
It asks how will they be prevented from floating away?
They're going to be set in a concrete footing for one, and the other is they're not going to be pressure treated or wood. They're going to be wrought iron, aluminum, or some
And those
metallic
are the
material.
same concrete footings that you say you don't have to compensate for?
That's right. No, you never compensate for what stuff that is in the ground. That's not considered a pervious, it's not considered flood storage capacity. It isn't flood storage capacity.
I'm concerned about this project, and I still stand by my opinion that the underground tank is a hydrologic restriction that has not been allowed for a number of years now by the DEP. And I think that puts your project in a problem with compensating for what you're trying to do. I think the neighborhood is, it's basically a bowl there that I think will flood a lot sooner than the surrounding land, and this homeowner would be in peril, basically. They'd be living in a lake most of the time, I would think. I've been out there several times, and it's always very, very damp. I'm not sure about the beams. I don't have any information from an engineer about the beams, whether their size is appropriate, whether we have not had construction of that type here.
DEP had suggested we use piers, and that's what we chose for piers. It's not an esoteric form of construction. It's pretty common material.
Well, we have no information about the beams, except for the size. We don't know if that's the appropriate size. We don't know if the construction method is appropriate for holding up a house. We don't know if the beams are going to be of a lasting type, or whether they're going to deteriorate much more rapidly than you would like when you're building something like a house that you want to last a while.
I believe that's the responsibility of the building department, and if he wants us to get something from a structural engineer, we will. I don't see that as one of the performance standards.
It's our responsibility not to approve something that's going to be falling apart in a number of years and causing problems in the resource areas.
It's your responsibility to regulate it and to reject it if it doesn't meet the performance standards, and I think we meet all of the performance standards of the Wetland Protection Act.
I think you're not meeting the performance standards, that's my opinion, but do you have anything else you'd like to say at this point?
No, I don't see where we don't meet the performance standards.
I'll open it up to the public then. Is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against this project?
Linda
Please
Ignacio.
identify yourself.
Linda Ignacio, 66 Shirley Avenue. I'm a butter. I own the property directly across the street from where they plan on building. I have some photos here of what it looked like after the 2006 flood. I'd like to pass these on. As you can see the mailbox. The cars were completely underwater. And as far as the holding tank, I had some questions on that. As far as at what elevation is that holding tank, the intake is going to be? And as far as this not having an impact on that neighborhood, that 2 55-gallon drums, this is what it looks like on a typical rain day. And this is 3 days after the day of the rainstorm, and then 3 days after. It's still, the street is underwater. It is impassable. You can't walk down the street. The street is underwater. So I think another 100 gallons is going to make a little bit of a difference. As far as construction, there was a duplex on Townsend Avenue across the street from the bowling alley that was knocked off its foundation during the flood. I went to that home about 6 months after. They couldn't shut a kitchen cabinet door. None of the windows would shut. The doors wouldn't shut. It was a hazard. And you know what the mother said? She said the worst part was the spider bites and the bug bites on her little girl. So whoever buys this home, it's trouble. And I don't believe there should be any more building in the floodplain until we get the whole situation with the dam under control. That's all I have to say. I'm against it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
My name is Tim Ignacio from 66 Shirley Ave. I am in the construction industry, and I do want to see projects go forward, you know, respectfully for the risk that you put out, but not on this particular project. Everybody says that they understand the area. You have your engineers, this architect that says he understands the area, and they could say that they've done some studies and they've done their homework. Have you looked at, or has Conservation looked at, the Inel application for the Crestgate system, which says they want to have the right to maintain the elevation of the river, which affects the surrounding tributaries, of 94.2 for an elevation, which is gonna put the groundwater at the top. It is gonna, the groundwater between the river and Clay Pit Brook is gonna be at the elevation where they have their ground. It's almost at the street elevation. So for somebody to want to build a house in this condition, if he wanted to build the house and he knew the consequences and he was gonna live there for 15 years, that's his own choice. But to have somebody else buy a home not knowing this, and all you say is they're gonna have to pump out a tank, which, what is the elevation on the inlet for the tank? I'm asking. Above 96. So that's not taking into account the groundwater, which you're saying that they have a solid foundation, and that's the same as a sand surface, which allows water to go in, and you have a foundation that doesn't allow the water to go in. So I understand. So now you have a tank that's going to take in surface water at 96 feet, which is already flooded the ground 2 feet, which Enel already wants to have the groundwater straight across. You can't even get a car in. You can't even walk to your house. You're gonna, even if they walked off of the rock into their grass to cut the grass, you can't even cut the grass because it's soaking wet. That's what that area is. It is wet water. I live there. It should not be allowed to be built on because it is unsafe not to be put there. I'm strongly against this project, and I'm sorry he has money put into it, but it needs to get taken care of. Like, keep it an empty lot, and that's the way it should be. There's so many outstanding issues in this neighborhood that's been going on for over 6 years, and they still can't even answer them. And it's a ready. Water comes from the river, comes in Clay Pit Brook, overflows the sewer system, and you get raw sewage that comes out into people's property, into their homes, into their mailboxes. This is raw sewage. This isn't just water, and this is what happens in the neighborhood. So just to take that into account, there's a lot of issues. So thank you for your time, and maybe they can cut the grass over there because it's 3 feet high.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
I also have photos. I'm sorry, my name is Linda Harvey. I live on Melrose Avenue. I also have some photos. I live on Melrose Avenue, and since my property abuts the parcel on Shirley Avenue, I often see standing water in the back of my property after heavy rains. If that area is filled in, the water doesn't go away. It just ends up in someone else's yard or basement. Residents are criticized for living in the floodplain, but it's the city that continues to grant building permits despite opposition from residents. There are consequences to every action, and further development in the Clay Pit Brook area will only increase the water problems in my neighborhood. FEMA said the 2006 flood alone cost residents and the city $20 million. Your home may have been spared, but your tax money was spent for public safety and cleanup. Flood insurance premiums have risen dramatically, and FEMA has expanded their floodplain maps since the 2006 and 2007 floods. The photo that I gave you shows the water that collects in the lowland that extends to 51 and 57 Shirley Avenue. Needless to say, the wooden fence doesn't stop water. Just because a small parcel of land is undeveloped doesn't mean there should be a house on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Yes, my name's John Hamblett. I live at 495 Varnum Avenue. I'm co-chair of the Pawtucketville Citizens Council, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Pawtucketville Citizens Council tonight. First, if I could, I'd like to just summarize why the Pawtucketville Citizens Council strongly opposes the proposed development. According to the National Weather Service, over the past 76 years, there have been 4 major floods, 6 moderate floods, and 21 minor floods. That's 31 flood events in 76 years. In the last flood, 78 of our homes were damaged. The flooding comes from Clay Pit. It comes from Clay Pit Brook. As the water level in the Merrimack rises, the culvert where Clay Pit Brook empties into the Merrimack is blocked. It's blocked by the rising water, and the flow of the water is reversed. So where the Clay Pit Brook empties into the Merrimack, the water is now coming in. In addition, water is coming down Clay Pit Brook from the catchment area. So you've got water coming in to the Clay Pit Brook floodplain area from 2 directions. There was some excellent research done by Enel in December of 2011, and it demonstrates how much higher the water floods in Clay Pit Brook floodplain as compared to the Merrimack. It also proves how much earlier it floods in Clay Pit Brook. Now take that information and the information I just gave you about the Merrimack, and that is 31 flood events in 76 years in the Merrimack. There have been more in Clay Pit Brook. In addition, if you take all the flood data from the National Weather Service and you do a simple linear regression modeling, a trend analysis, a best fit trend analysis, it shows that the frequency of flooding is increasing. In the last 20 years, it's substantially increased. And the height of the floods have been increasing over the last 76 years. One of the contributing factors of the increasing frequency and the increasing height is the loss of wetlands and floodplains along Clay Pit Brook and the Merrimack. As of 2000, the year 2000, we had lost 50% of the wetlands in the United States. We are committed to reversing this trend. There are so many things wrong with this notice of intent, I don't know where to start, so I'll narrow it down to 3 concerns. We also do not agree with Mr. Erickson's compensatory calculations. I've spoke with Mass DEP, and they have advised us that in calculating compensatory storage, Mass DEP takes into account the stone fill, whether it be around storage chambers, underground drains, or elsewhere in the construction of the structure. This is a quote from Mass DEP. Applicants will often assume that the void space in the stone fill is up to 40%. Mr. Erickson says 50. Mass DEP does not agree with this interpretation. And if you are going to calculate compensation, you have to compensate the material of the tanks themselves, as well as any of the surrounding gravel fill. These are also not included in the calculations. Mass DEP advises the soil will be needed to be tested in order to determine whether the stone pad on which the pilings rest and the portion of the pilings below ground level must be included in compensatory calculations. It has to do with porosity, and I don't know what that is, but you measure the porosity, and apparently that tells you how much water the soil holds or something like that. But according to Mass DEP, the real showstopper is the subsurface tank. And this is not the first time it has been a stumbling block for this project. Mass DEP number 206-0584, 7 years ago, 2005. On July 19th, 2005, Brad Pacheco, who I think was one of Louis Saab's people, filed a notice of intent for a single-family residence at 51 Shirley Avenue. In order to compensate for filling the floodplain, they recommended or were suggesting a flood mitigation tank. By the way, this is on the internet. You go to the Northeast office website and you look under NOI and it tells you all the notice of intents and the reasons they were rejected for the last 30 years. They quote, "The project does not appear to meet the performance standards of 10.574A in that a flood mitigation tank does not provide an unrestricted hydraulic connection to the waterway." On April 26, 2012, Mass DEP commented on this notice of intent. It's on the website already. And their comment is, the project does not meet the BLSF performance standing, and I looked that up, it's bordering lands subject to flooding, performance standards under 310 CMR 10.574A. The holding tanks are a hydraulic restriction. That's the same law that they quoted 7 years ago. I didn't know about this website, and before a couple meetings ago, I called the service center at Mass DEP in Wilmington, and they confirmed that the storage tank did not meet wetlands performance standards, again, because it is a hydraulic restriction. So today, June 27th, 3:30, I again called Mass DEP, and I explained that the underground storage tank was now much smaller. And what do you think they said? The storage tank does not meet performance standards. The holding tanks are a hydraulic restriction. It does not matter what size it is. The use of subsurface storage tanks of any size are not permitted. There were about 6 questions that the chairman asked at the last meeting, some of which I don't understand, what the correct datum is, what the correct topography is, that the current plans are 6 inches off. But one of the questions he asked was about the steel girders. And he asked, what is the lifespan of the steel girders? And I Googled it too, and there's one comment in there about some steel in a bridge that could last 100 years. So I called an engineering firm, and here's what they had to say. John, I received a response from our structural engineers regarding your steel pile request for information. I will forward the article to you. It basically says the steel should be hot dip galvanized or painted with a special paint system. Also, the soil should be tested for any corrosive chemistry. This is a 12-inch wide American flange, wide flange beam. It's a 12W50, so it weighs 50 pounds per linear foot. A heavy steel wide flange section should be good for possibly 30 to 70 years, depending on the variables mentioned above. So I can tell you what's going to happen. In 25 years, the applicant or the owner is going to return to this commission, and he's going to ask for concrete pilings. He won't be able to compensate for the fill, because by then his yard will probably be underwater, and he's going to seek an exception from you. You're going to be under real pressure to say yes, because if you don't, he loses his home. Mr. Erickson also referred to the lifespan of wood as being shorter than structural steel. I consulted an architect who specializes in architectural and historical restoration. And he tells me that the piers that make up a lot of Back Bay and Manhattan are wood, and that if wood is submerged in water, completely submerged in water, it can last almost an infinite period of time. In fact, some of the wood that's holding up Boston is apparently over 250 years old. Mr. Erickson and his client are working under the principle that they have an infinite number of Conservation Commission meetings to get this right. They will get some corrective advice from you every 2 weeks, some free engineering from the city of Lowell, and then hope that the sun, the moon, and the stars align and provide a solution to this problem. We do not want to spend another 10 months fixing their mistakes. While Mr. Erickson may be paid by the hour, this commission and these neighborhood residents aren't. We are asking you to deny this notice of intent on the basis of information, insufficient information submitted, and the plan does not comply with the performance standards of the Wetlands Protection Act.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Anyone else that wishes to speak on this project? No one has appeared. I think Mr. Hamblett was quite clear in expressing what I had already been feeling about this project, in that we do have some pretty serious unknowns, and we also have some parts of the project that appear to not meet the conditions of the Act, principally the holding tank. My familiarity with this lot, I would be hard-pressed to see how this project could ever go forward, how it could ever meet the conditions that are necessary as put forth by the Wetlands Protection Act. We could spend several more meetings gathering information, but I think the bottom line is that there is no real way to compensate on this particular lot. This particular lot is not a lot that is suitable for the type of construction that's proposed. We're talking about people living in a very, very wet condition here. And everybody loves a new house, but what happens when that house starts to wear and things start happening? And then, you know, that's on the conscience of everybody who was involved in approving it. And I don't feel that I want to be one of those people that is involved in the approval of this project. I think we either have, we have a couple of possibilities here. We could request further information from the applicant. We could get a couple of bits more at the next meeting and maybe some more at the meeting following. And perhaps get a complete filing. But it's my feeling that the other possibility is the more realistic one, and that is for this commission to deny this project as it's presented. And the applicant has the right of appeal to the DEP. We've had some quotes from the DEP tonight by one of the speakers, so I'm not sure how good a reception the project would receive if it were appealed to them by the applicant. If we did, by some chance, issue an order of conditions on this project, I'm pretty sure the people who are opposing it that are here tonight would probably appeal to the DEP, and it would end up in the same place. I think the DEP has been quite firm and quite clear about the holding tanks. And I think as a flood storage area, this is a valuable piece of property. But as a house lot, it's a tragedy waiting to happen. I'm chairing the meeting tonight, so I'm not going to be making any motions, but I would look forward to a motion from one of the members here tonight that would resolve this issue of an extremely sensitive area being faced with development that seems to be not appropriate.
I guess I just have a question about this previous Mass DEP filing for 2005. Was it withdrawn by the applicant, or was it denied, or did Mass DEP stop the work that would be done there?
Did you look that up?
Yeah, I just looked it up. The quote that Mr. Hamlet has, and where it says Mass DEP comments, those are just comments. It doesn't say whether it was denied or not, but I will say that looking at a couple other proposals that they had comments on, they had comments such as like project is flagged or project should not be approved. This one just only says in its comments that it doesn't appear to meet the performance standards. So I'm trying to find more than that, but personally, I feel that just these kind of like cut and pasted quotes that Mr. Hamlet has on here are definitely interesting and something we should look into, but I personally would feel more comfortable if this information from the DEP was to come either from the DEP to one of our administrators or be a public comment. I'm not saying that I'm suspicious, but the second comment that he says he received in an email, I mean, we really have no proof that that's accurate. So I'd be interested in having somebody from our commission speak to the DEP about it. Just my opinion. I mean, I'll go with the pleasure of the board as far as the motion itself, but I haven't been able to find anything more than just the one comment that's there.
Joe, did you happen to look back into this earlier filing?
We hadn't looked into that earlier filing, but could if the commission would like us to. I said we haven't looked at that previous filing for this address, but we could if the commission would like staff to do so.
We don't have to file again, but when we make a revision to the plan, we submit that to DEP at the same time we submit it to Conservation, and they get the opportunity to comment on it. So there aren't yet, which probably means they just haven't gotten around to answering it yet. It's kind of summertime, and DEP feels like they're overworked, and people are on vacation, so it's often difficult to get the comments from DEP within the 21-day period that they're required to act. Not from the change plan, no.
Have you submitted the memorandum that we got just recently to DEP?
Yes, we have.
Any more questions from the commission? Joe, I don't know what kind of filing system you have, but is that a file that you could easily put your hand on from 2005?
It would take a little bit of time to be able to dig that up, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I'll stand by my choices here as to where we go from here. In my mind, we have lack of information and lack of compliance with the performance standards and sufficient cause to deny this project. Or we could continue it for further information. We could get the file from the former project, but I'm not really sure that's relevant here. 2005 was before both floods that flooded the neighborhood. I'm not sure that looking at that file would give us any further information. I think we need to go by what's been submitted here tonight. I think we have serious questions about the soils and the type of construction, which would be a reason to continue. But in the end, I'm not sure that this is going to meet the performance standards, and I'm loath to have the neighbors coming down here every meeting and to have us spending our time as well on a project that seems rather unlikely to ever be able to go forward. So I guess what we need is a motion from a member of the board. What's your pleasure?
I do have a copy of the order of conditions that was issued here, and date of issuance 10/5/05. So if you'd like to continue this and we can get you copies of all of that information, we'd be happy to do that. I have a copy of the old plan, and I have a copy of the order of conditions permitting the work.
I'm not sure that's relevant. I mean, it's the same piece of property, but it's a different time. 2005, 7 years ago, was really different regulations as well. I'm not sure that that's relevant to what we're discussing here tonight.
Some of the regulations are different, you're right about that. Nothing has changed in the floodplain regulations.
I'm loath, if it were the same applicant, it might be worth comparing, but this was an entirely different applicant, and I'm not sure we should be bringing their file into our proceedings here.
I make a motion to deny the project. Project does not appear to meet the performance standards.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second for discussion. Seconded by Ms. Beardron. Discussion.
I just have one more question for Mr. Erickson. You received the comments from the DEP dated April 26th already, right? Where they stated that the holding tanks are a hydraulic restriction?
I'm sorry, could you say it a little louder?
Did you already receive and address the comments from the DEP from
We
April?
addressed DEP's comments.
26th.
I have not had a reply from them yet. I'm waiting for a reply from them. And that is a reasonable reason to continue it if you want to continue it for the DEP comments. And you should be aware that that old permit just expired in October of 2011.
The DEP comment would still be relevant to what you've got here in front of us, though. You still have a holding tank, and their comment was that the holding tank was a restriction. Therefore, I think
I
that
spoke to
nothing has
DEP.
changed as far as their comment.
I spoke to DEP. They told me, do what you can do, but we want you to use piers. We said, okay. We did what we can do. So I'm waiting for comments from them. If they say that we can't do that, then we may be able to find that remaining compensatory storage somewhere else. But this was approved, this was legal up until 2011. I don't see what's different now. We're using the same technology. The only difference is we've got 100 gallons of storage, and they use several thousands of gallons of storage. I don't know what's different in this than the Grandview. They had hundreds of thousands of gallons of storage.
That's not relevant here. That was built some time ago, and it's an entirely different type of building.
I think past projects are relevant.
And I think that everybody that saw that go up was really sad to say that they permitted it.
Let me suggest that you continue this for 2 weeks so that we can get the reply from
think that-
DEP, and I will provide you the additional information from the previous filing so that you can compare the two. This is a better design than the previous filing that was already approved.
I don't think the previous filing should be brought in here. That's just my opinion. This was another applicant. You're using their materials, and I think it's irrelevant to bring in the previous filing. Your task here is to bring in a filing that we can permit, and we haven't seen a filing yet. I haven't seen a filing yet that we can permit.
The question is, do we meet the performance standards? If theirs met
I
the
think-
performance standards in 2005, I don't see
wanna
why we
argue-
don't meet them
I don't
now.
want to argue back and forth here with you, Mr. Erickson. We've got a motion on the table. When you bring in a plan and then you change it every 2 weeks, you're essentially bringing in a new plan without having to pay the application fees for it. So, I'm not going to permit arguing back and forth. We have a motion to deny this project. Should it be denied, the applicant has the right to appeal it to the DEP. And are there any more questions from the board? Ready for a vote, then? All those in favor of the denial of this project, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. The project's been denied. The reason for the denial will be insufficient information and that the plan doesn't comply with the performance standards as set forth in the Wetlands Protection Act. Thank you for your attendance. Our next project is a request for determination of applicability. Mark Bergeron Naper, 45 Carley Way. The project location is at 45 Carley Way to construct a new rear porch. Is there someone here representing Mr. Bergeron Naper?
I'm the contractor for the job.
Please identify yourself.
My name is Jared Manser. I own Homes by Design. I'll be doing the construction, hopefully doing the construction on the 45 Carley Way.
Get a little closer to the microphone.
Yes, of course, sorry. It's Jared Manser. I don't really have a presentation set up or anything. If any questions you may have, I'd be glad to answer.
Okay, I took a look at the site this morning.
Okay?
It appears that there was a porch or a balcony of some sort there
Yeah,
previously.
yeah, the homeowner had removed it already in preparation for the deck. So unfortunately, it was done before the permit went to you guys, before the board.
This new deck, however, is slightly larger.
Yeah, it's going to be, the overall size is going to be 16 by 14. Be 14 off the house, 16 wide, the length of the house. It's going to have 10 by 14 of it will be a roofed screen porch, and it'll be a 6 by 10 area, just open deck. It'll all be built on sonotubes.
Did you say 6 by 10 open?
Yes.
That's
Without-
20, that adds up to 20 feet, doesn't it?
No, well, it's going to be side by side, so that would be, so you got your 10 by 14 would be closed, and then you'll have 6 by 14, excuse me, the length of the deck.
Okay. Can you describe the construction of the support system?
It's going to be 4-foot sonotubes.
4?
4 foot, yeah, into the ground. Cement, 12-inch sonotube. From there, it'd be pressure-treated lumber, 4x4s up to a pressure-treated frame. The exterior portions of the deck, we're going to be using composite materials. It's like a wood and plastic composite decking with a vinyl rail. Asphalt roofing, standard shingles. But the only disturbance of the ground would be for the footings.
Now,
I believe, if I remember correctly, there would be, I think I planned on 9 holes. I actually turned in all my, paperwork into you guys. So I don't even actually have a copy of my permit. I believe I figured 9 holes. I'm gonna have 3 beams because of the way the roofs ran.
Yeah, looks like 9.
No, they'll all be dug by hand. There's no need to bring equipment or anything like that in. It'd be
Now, will you
post-hole.
have excess material what happens to that?
Most of it, believe it or not, usually ends up back in the hole. It amazes me every time how much we're actually able to get back in around the sonotubes. Anything that would be extra, if it's something that needs to be brought off the property, I can do that. That's not at all a problem.
Well, this is actually in the buffer zone. I believe you're
Yeah, we're within 100 feet of the wetlands,
about
which is...
73 feet, is it,
Yeah,
from the
I
wetland?
believe. Yep.
I took a look at the surrounding area. The porch is on the side of the house away from the
Yes.
wetland area.
Yep.
The wetland area can barely be seen. There is a strip of trees, but, you know, it's a good distance, and
Yeah.
between the porch and the wetland is heavily vegetated with both lawn and then a strip of forested land.
Yep.
I didn't feel that this construction really was going to affect the wetland in any respect. Yeah. Why don't we see if there's any questions from the board?
The memo that we received from Joe indicated that the applicant intends, or didn't specify whether you intend to do tree removal. Can you address that real quick?
Tree removal?
Tree
No, there's
removal.
no trees to be
No
removed.
trees? Okay. That's my only question. Thank you.
Any other questions?
What was that, I'm sorry? No, I don't believe so. Not that I'm aware of.
This is a request for determination of applicability, since it's within 100 feet of the wetland. It is in the buffer zone. However, I don't think it's going to affect the wetland in any way, so it's probably a good candidate for a -3. I'm not even concerned about a hay bale line, which is one of the comments that we received from DPD, because I think the vegetation that's out there is certainly enough of a filter to filter anything that should erode.
Okay.
So, what's the pleasure of the board on this? We'd need a motion to either determine it applicable, but you can put conditions on that it's a -3 would mean that it's applicable because of its location. However, it's not going to have a serious effect on the resource. Therefore, it won't need to go on to the filing of a notice of intent. No, I
All right,
can't.
is that good? All right.
Issue. A neg. Mis. Right. Right, but it won't affect the resource.
Second.
You got all that, Joe? Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Aye, it's unanimous.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, none of my neighbors showed up to.
A little tricky.
I need to sign
What's today, the 27th, right?
Although your three's backwards.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it easy, Joe. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you, ladies. Good night.
Okay, we do have one more item on the agenda, and that's the approval of the minutes of June 13th, 2012. Are there any additions, corrections, or motions concerning the minutes of June 13th?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from June 13th.
Motion by Ms. Chalupa, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Lynch. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn,
I make a motion to adjourn.
seconded?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.